Every year, American homeowners waste nearly half the fertilizer they buy. It never reaches a single root. For your yard, that's hundreds of dollars washing into storm drains or building up as salt in the ground. The fix isn't buying a better product. It's stopping the handful of mistakes that keep the whole cycle going. We're counting down 8 fertilizer mistakes that most homeowners still make, starting with the one that's quietly killing your plants right now. Mistake number 8. Fertilizing sick or struggling plants. Your hydrangea is wilting, your roses look pale, and your first instinct is to grab a bag of fertilizer. That instinct might be the reason they never recovered. Here's what actually happens. When a plant is struggling, the roots are already under stress. Maybe it's heat damage. Maybe the soil is compacted and the roots can't breathe. Maybe there's a fungal issue slowly working through the stems. Whatever the cause, the roots are weakened. And concentrated synthetic fertilizer is loaded with salts. Those salts pull moisture out of the roots instead of putting nutrients in. You're not helping the plant eat. You're forcing it to lose water at a time when it's already running dry. A healthy azalea in well-drained soil can handle a solid nutrient boost in early spring and come back looking great. But take that same azalea in July. 3 weeks into a heat wave, with temperatures pushing 95 degrees, roots barely holding on. Now you pour a granular synthetic fertilizer around the base. Within days, the leaf edges go brown. The plant drops leaves it was trying to keep alive. Fertilizer burn. The University of Georgia Extension has flagged this over and over. The majority of residential fertilizer burn cases happen between June and August, exactly when homeowners are most anxious about how their yards look. And if you've ever lost a plant right after trying to save it, you probably blamed the heat, or the drought, or just bad genetics. But there's a real chance the fertilizer itself pushed it past the point of recovery. Not because it was defective, because the plant simply wasn't ready to take it. So what should you do when something in your yard looks rough? The best first step is actually the hardest one. Do nothing. Water it consistently, check for pests or disease, make sure the ground around it isn't packed solid. Give it 2 to 3 weeks to tell you what's really going on. If it starts bouncing back on its own, it never needed fertilizer to begin with. If it keeps declining, reach for something gentle, like fish emulsion, at half the label rate, not a full-strength synthetic dose. Stop, watch, then decide. The next mistake on this list goes one step further back, because it doesn't start when you fertilize. It starts the moment you decide what kind of fertilizer to pick up. Mistake number 7. Thinking synthetic and organic fertilizers are the same. Chemically, the nitrogen in a bag of synthetic fertilizer and the nitrogen in compost are identical atoms. So why does your soil care which one you use? Because delivery changes everything. Synthetic fertilizer is salt-based. When you spread something like Scott's Turf Builder or Miracle Grow on your lawn, 80 to 90% of those nutrients release within the first week. The plant gets a fast hit of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, those 3 numbers on every bag. The NPK ratio. That part works. The plant greens up, but the soil underneath gets nothing out of it. The fertilizer goes straight to the plant and skips every living thing in between. Organic fertilizer works on a completely different clock. When you apply compost, bone meal, or fish emulsion, those nutrients don't go directly to the plant at all. They feed the billions of bacteria and fungi living in your soil. Those microbes break the material down over weeks and months, and along the way, they release nutrients in a form the roots can actually use, like the difference between a protein shake and a real meal. Same nutrition on paper, different results for your body over time. And that difference matters more than you'd think. Synthetic feeds the plant, but leaves the soil empty. Season after season, the ground gets weaker while the plant keeps needing more. Organic feeds the soil first, and in return, the soil feeds the plant on its own schedule. One means you keep reapplying every few weeks. The other gradually builds ground that can hold its own. Now, to be fair, Synthetic fertilizer is not poison. If you need your lawn green for a wedding next weekend, or you're correcting a severe nitrogen deficiency right now, a single application is not going to wreck everything. The damage comes when it's the only thing you ever use, year after year, with nothing going back into the ground. But even if you've already made the switch to organic, there's one expectation that trips up almost every homeowner who tries it for the first time. Mistake number 6. Expecting overnight results after switching to organic. You made the switch to organic, and 3 weeks later, your lawn looks worse than before. You're not doing it wrong. You're just measuring on the wrong clock. Synthetic fertilizer works fast because it's designed to. Those concentrated salts dissolve in water and hit the roots within days. You see green in a week. That's the speed most homeowners are used to. So when they switch to organic and the lawn doesn't respond the same way, they assume it failed. It didn't fail. It just hasn't started yet. Organic fertilizer has to be broken down by the bacteria and fungi in your soil before the nutrients become available to roots. That takes time. In the first season or two, your soil is rebuilding its microbe population. It's like restarting a kitchen that's been closed for years. The equipment works, the ingredients are there, but there's no staff to cook. You need time to bring that crew back. During that stretch, the grass might look thin. The color might be uneven. That's normal. Most people give up somewhere around week 4 or 5. They look at their neighbor's lawn, which got a synthetic application last Tuesday and is already dark green, and they decide organic doesn't work. This is the top reason people go back to what they were using before. The real timeline looks more like this. If you put down a 1/4 inch of compost as a top dressing every spring and combine it with an organic fertilizer twice a year, you'll start noticing measurable change in 6 to 12 months. Your local cooperative extension service, which exists in every county in America and costs nothing, can test your soil before and after so you can see the numbers move. The savings add up over time. Healthier soil means fewer pest problems, less watering, and less money spent chasing issues that keep coming back. If you need your yard looking sharp for a graduation party or a holiday cookout, one application of synthetic is not going to destroy everything you've built. Just get back to feeding the soil after that. No guilt required. But whether you're using organic or synthetic, none of it counts for much if you're putting it down at the wrong time of year. And most people are. Mistake number 5. Fertilizing at the wrong time of year. Professional lawn services show up every 6 weeks like clockwork. The problem is, your soil doesn't run on a calendar. 2 things determine when fertilizer actually works: soil temperature and where your plants are in their growing season. Miss either one, and you're wasting money. In early spring, once soil hits about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, the microbes wake up and start processing nutrients. That's your first real window. The second comes in late summer or early fall, when roots are actively growing and storing energy for winter. Those 2 windows are when fertilizer, especially organic, does its best work. The worst time to fertilize is the middle of summer. When temperatures climb past 90 degrees, many plants slow down or go semi-dormant. Grass, in particular, stops growing and starts conserving energy. Spreading fertilizer during that stretch is like waking someone up at 3 in the morning and handing them a plate of food. They don't want it, and they can't use it. Winter is just as wasteful. Soil temperatures drop, microbial activity shuts down, and anything you spread sits on the surface until spring rain carries it into the nearest waterway. That's not feeding your lawn. That's feeding the drain. Now, these windows shift depending on where you live, and the differences are bigger than most people realize. In Minnesota, Zone 4 on the USDA hardiness map, your spring window might not open until late April. In Florida, Zone 9, you could be fertilizing as early as February. In California's Central Valley, Zone 9B, summer dormancy can stretch from June through September. A company like True Green or Weedman runs one schedule nationwide because it's simpler to manage. But your yard has its own calendar, and it doesn't match theirs. One quick note: If you're growing vegetables, your timing is completely separate from lawn care. Heavy feeders like tomatoes need nutrients during their fruiting window, not just at the start of the season. Timing matters. But all these rules become guesswork if you've never checked what your soil actually needs, and almost no one has. Mistake number 4. Never testing your soil before you fertilize. Would you take medicine without knowing what's wrong with you? That's exactly what most homeowners do every time they open a bag of fertilizer. Everybody talks about healthy soil. Every gardening video, every product label, every article online says your goal should be healthy soil. But almost nobody tells you how to actually measure whether yours is or not. So most people just guess. They walk into the garden center, grab whatever's on the shelf, and hope for the best. That's not a plan. That's a coin flip. A soil test takes the guessing out of it. For somewhere between $10 and $20, you can send a sample to your local cooperative extension service, which is run through the USDA and available in every county in the country. Within a couple of weeks, you get a report showing pH, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and organic matter percentage. That tells you exactly what your ground already has and what it's missing before you spend a single dollar. The results can save you real money. Say your report comes back showing a pH of 7.5, which is on the alkaline side. At that level, phosphorus gets locked up in the soil and your plants can't absorb it regardless of how much you add. If you've been spreading a phosphorus-heavy fertilizer, every application was wasted. The test would have caught that before you bought the first bag. And it works the other direction too. If your nitrogen is fine but potassium is low, you can skip the balanced mix and buy exactly what's needed. If you don't want to wait for a lab, you can pick up a home test kit at Home Depot or Lowe's for about $10 to $15. Less precise, but it gives you a useful starting point on pH and the major nutrients. Either way, running a test once every 2 to 3 years is plenty for most yards. Before we move on, a quick pause. We're halfway through this list. If you've been following along, you'll notice that 4 of the last 8 mistakes share one thing in common. They all come from acting before understanding what's going on below the surface. The next 3 go further, and they stack. You now know how to read your soil. But knowing what it needs and knowing how much to give it are not the same thing. The next mistake is where that difference costs people the most. Mistake number 3. Using more fertilizer to fix bad results. When your lawn doesn't respond to fertilizer, the temptation is to double the dose. Here's why that almost always makes everything worse. Over-fertilizing doesn't just scorch your grass. That's what most people picture, the brown tips, the crispy patches, but the real damage runs much deeper than what you see on the surface. When you go past the label rate on a bag of Scott's or any concentrated synthetic product, the excess salts draw water out of the roots instead of delivering nutrients to them. Your grass ends up looking like it's dying of thirst. In a real sense, it is. But scorching is actually the small problem. The bigger issue is what happens to the nutrients your plants never use. Leftover nitrogen dissolves in rain and drains straight into the groundwater. In coastal areas, it fuels algal blooms that suffocate rivers, bays, and estuaries. In the Gulf of Mexico, nitrogen runoff from both residential and agricultural land has created a hypoxic zone where oxygen levels drop so low that marine life can't survive. At peak season, that dead stretch covers roughly 6,000 square miles. And if you're using organic, don't assume you're in the clear. Too much animal manure creates phosphorus overload, which washes into waterways just like nitrogen does. Excess compost can draw in rodents and pests you never had before. More is better doesn't apply to organic any more than it applies to synthetic. Every bag of fertilizer has a recommended rate per 1,000 square feet printed on the label. That number is the ceiling, not a suggestion. Applying twice the rate doesn't produce twice the results. It produces damaged roots, contaminated water, and money you won't get back. Every mistake on this list so far has been about what happens above the ground, the things you can spot with your own eyes. The next one takes you below the surface. And what's going on down there decides whether any of this actually holds up over time. Mistake number 2. Ignoring what's happening under your soil. Everything you've judged about your landscape, the color of your grass, the size of your blooms, happened above ground. But everything that determines those results is happening below it. Most people think of soil as dirt, brown stuff that holds plants in place. But a single tablespoon of healthy soil contains more living organisms than the entire human population on Earth. Bacteria, fungi, nematodes, earthworms, all working together to break down organic material and turn it into nutrients that roots can absorb. Your soil isn't a container. It's a workforce doing the heavy lifting without you ever seeing it. Plants actually feed this workforce on purpose. Their roots release sugars and proteins into the surrounding ground, attracting microbes. In return, those microbes deliver nutrients back in forms the roots can use. It's a trade. The plant offers food, the soil life offers nutrition. When synthetic fertilizer takes over, that trade falls apart. The nutrients reach the roots directly, and the soil never gets involved. The microbes have nothing to process, so their populations shrink. Over seasons and years, the ground loses its ability to hold water, hold nutrients, and support healthy root growth. You end up with compacted soil that repels rainwater instead of absorbing it. And the worse it gets, the more fertilizer you need just to keep things looking the way they used to. You can check for signs right now. Dig up a cubic foot of soil and count the earthworms. 10 to 12 means the biology is active. Fewer than 5 means something is off. Grab a handful of soil and squeeze it. Healthy ground crumbles apart when you open your hand. Worn-out soil holds together in a tight ball. If your ground looks like that, it's not too late. Soil biology can bounce back in 1 to 3 growing seasons once you start adding organic material and pull back on the synthetics. It doesn't take a complete overhaul. The life comes back faster than you'd expect. Every mistake on this list, from number 8 to this one, is a symptom. The last one is the cause behind all of them, and it will change how you think about fertilizer from this point forward. Mistake number 1. Feeding your plants instead of building your soil. Every mistake on this list traces back to one belief, that fertilizer's job is to feed your plants. It's not. And once you see that, you'll never fertilize the same way again. Think about what happened through this whole countdown. You fertilize a struggling plant because you assume it needs food. You double the dose because you figure more food means better results. You skip the soil test because you're watching the plant, not the ground. You pick the wrong time because you're reacting to what the plant looks like today instead of what the soil needs this season. Every one of those choices starts from the same assumption. The plant is the customer, and fertilizer is the product. But the plant was never supposed to be the customer. The soil was. When you shift from feeding the plant to building the soil, everything gets simpler. You add organic material that feeds the microbes, fungi, and earthworms underground. They break it down and deliver nutrients to the roots in the right amounts at the right time. The plant gets what it needs, but it gets it through the soil, not from a bag. You stop being the one doing all the work. The ground starts doing it for you. This isn't just a nice idea. Research from Cornell University and the USDA has shown that soil with strong levels of organic matter holds roughly 20% more water than depleted or overworked soil. That same body of work found that residential landscapes managed with a soil-first approach need 30 to 50% less fertilizer after just 2 to 3 years. Less product, lower cost, stronger results. And the improvements compound over time. If you're wondering where to begin, go back to mistake number 4. Test your soil. Know what you're starting with. Then, give it time. Mistake number 6 matters here too. The shift won't show up in a week, but once the biology rebuilds, your yard starts working with you instead of against you. Stop feeding your plants. Start building your soil. That's the one line this entire video comes down to. And if this changed the way you think about fertilizer, you should see what we cover next. The same thinking that causes fertilizer mistakes shows up in how people water, how they deal with soil amendments, and how they approach composting. If you don't want to miss that, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.